Okay, the last time we were talking about the filters and barriers of communication, and we said filters complicate the communication process because when we encode messages or decode messages, we don't really receive them or send them in a vacuum. They are filtered by our individual filters. They are percolated through our individual filters. And that's why the process of encoding or decoding is very complicated. Now we come on to the barriers. What is the difference, do you think, between filters and barriers? What could be the difference between filters and barriers? Filters can block part of it. Barriers is total. Is that so? Okay. Filters and barriers. Filters are part of the encoding and the decoding process. And I mean, when you are sending messages or receiving them, filters have a very important role to play. Whereas barriers are obstacles, anything that comes in the way of the reception of your message. So filters are not intentional barriers. They are not designed to impede the sending of your message, but that's the environment, that's the context in which your messages are sent and received. Whereas barriers are those obstacles to the sending and receiving of barriers. Can you think of any other difference between barriers and filters? Do you think of any other difference? No? No? Do you think barriers are internal and filters are external? Or do you think barriers also could be in what way? Give me examples.
Like a language barrier is internal.
Okay.
But let's say external noise or
Okay. So both can be internal and external. Yeah. What are the different stages at which we can have barriers? We have talked about filters. Let's look at the different stages at which we can have barriers. One can be at the stage of receiving the message. Receiving. So we call them barriers to reception. Is that okay? Barriers to reception. Tell me what kind of barriers can there be to reception? Noise. Yeah. Indifference. That you haven't received the message at all.
some handicap.
Okay.
Hear properly.
Okay. Hearing problem. Yeah. Okay. Any other way? Any other reason? Emotional state. Okay. What else? Any other? Receivers inattentive would be sleeping, receivers inattentive. Okay. Anything else? Wrong channel. Wrong channel. Suppose in a crowd you shout to your friend. Do you think your friend will hear you? So if you shout to him, maybe he hasn't heard you at all. It could be the wrong channel. So this will be the first kind of barriers, barriers to reception. What could be the other kind of barriers? Barriers to, you have received the message. Suppose I speak to you in Swahili. I speak to you in Swahili. You have received the message, but have you understood my message? Forget Swahili, German. You won't understand. So the first stage is reception. The second stage will be understanding. Give me examples of that. Give me examples of barriers to understanding. Age difference, okay. So suppose you use a very difficult language, inappropriate,
Very different vocabulary.
difficult vocabulary, okay, okay. Educational background, yeah. Intellectual difference. You are all very technical, you are all techies, yeah. And if you have to explain how a computer works to a layperson, do you think they will understand, a layperson would understand your jargon? No. If you use a jargon and it's a very specialized jargon, the other person may not know. And any other difference? Sometimes you understand the verbal message, you have received the verbal message, but you haven't really understood what was being said. Does that happen? Yeah? So, understanding and not understanding. Okay? What would be the third kind of barriers? These are the most difficult kind of barriers. We call them barriers to acceptance. Yeah? Why is it that you never do whatever you are asked to do? Because you are judgmental. If you are judgmental, you feel that this is not right. I don't want to do it. Ego problems, yes. If you have a very strong sense of self-importance and you feel no one is better than me, then you don't accept others' ideas. Sentimental. Sentimental, how does that come in the acceptance? How does sentiment come into acceptance? What? Somebody said? Disapproval. Okay, if you disapprove of somebody, then you don't want to accept their messages. What else? Huh? Mistrust. Very good. If you mistrust a person, then you, even if they tell you good things, you don't want to accept them. What else? You can have prejudices. Yeah? Biases. So all these things might be barriers to acceptance. Now we'll do a short exercise. What is the objective? We are trying to remove the barriers to acceptance, right? Barriers, different barriers at different stage. We try to understand how filters work, and we said that knowing what filters are, understanding other people's filters can help us in sending and receiving messages effectively. If we understand that everybody is not like us, people are different from us, their filters are different from us, and if we try to understand those filters, then maybe we can solve the communication problems. Similarly, if we understand what the barriers are at every stage, at the stage of reception, at the stage of understanding, and also at the stage of acceptance, maybe we can find a way of communicating in a better way. Yeah. So we'll do two things. First of all, we'll do a small role play, and I want two of you to volunteer to come. Now, it's a very typical situation where the filters come in as well as barriers. The situation is like this. Whoever is going to volunteer, please come forward. Please come forward. I need two people. Okay. Now, one of you will be the father and the other will be the son. This is in the first role play. So, you will take the first 5 minutes or so to play the first role play, in which one of you is the father, A is the father and B is the son. And the situation is like this. You have got admission in CAT. Yeah. After this, your goal is to go to IIM, and you got admission in CAT. And your father thinks that management schools are a waste of money. They don't teach you a thing. Yeah. So this is the conflict situation. The conflict situation is like this, that you are hell-bent on taking the CAT exam. In fact, you've already taken the CAT exam, you have cleared, you've gotten through the interview, and now you want him to pay the fees. That's his job, right? but he's reluctant to do because he's of the old school. He's come up the hard way. Yeah, he's come up in life, but he's come up the hard way, and he believes that the only way to learn management is through experience. So he's dead against management schools. He feels that they can't teach you a thing. Now this is the situation, and the two of them are going to play out this, role play the situation before you. What you're going to do, the rest of you, is observe what are the filters that come into play here. You will make a note of these filters, and later on when we have a discussion, you will tell me what are the filters which came in the way of their communication. So, are you ready, guys? The father and the son? Yeah? You just be natural. Do it the way your father would do it and the way you would do it. It's only a few months away, is it? Or a few years away? Yeah, okay. So over to you.
I got to interview for Nonverbal and
Son, you don't understand. This is not meant for you. You know how much money they take? They don't teach you anything in maths.
But Dad, I'm going to earn a lot of money after that. I mean, good, right?
But what happens if you commit one mistake? You're thrown out. Will you be able to manage this stress? They don't teach you.
You're talking about that.
No, Chitta. This is not the way it happens. Management schools, the books can't teach you anything. It's the life that you follow.
Dad, we're going to have foreign professors. I mean, we're going to have lots of good professors.
I don't believe in that. I don't believe that life. They're going to teach you the nuances of life through books. No, Chitta. No.
Come on, Dad. Please try to understand. You can score. I can earn more money than you. Come on.
That is not the point. What are you trying to prove, Chitta? You can earn more money, that you have more status than me. I'm your father. Show some respect. I'm sorry. This is what happens if you go to a place like that. You lose all your Indian values.
What do you mean by Indian values? Come on.
No, Chitta.
Dad,
I'm so sorry. I brought you up.
I've given 1 year of my life to Cat. Come on, I have to
I've
go
given
to
all my years after marriage. You're not sure you know. But I get this.
This is my life, Dad. Come on, I mean.
And you think I don't care for it? You think I
know that you're not going to care for my development, but come on, I mean. Dad, please. Please, Dad, understand.
You try to impose it and say, please. What are you going to do? You're going to listen to me. That's it. This family, this house is governed by me, not your prejudices. When you get a status of your own, then talk to me like that. You are going to learn the hard way, because that's what is going to sustain you later in your life. That's what is going to stay with you. It's a point taken.
Yeah, sure.
Sort.
Thank you. Is it so mild back home? I thought it was much more incendiary. It doesn't come to blows, but I'm sure it's more heated up than this. We were exaggerating. No, you weren't exaggerating. Okay, now let's look at the filters. What filters and barriers came into play here? Why do you think this happened? What was the main difference? Thought process? Huh? Very good. Okay. Generational difference? Generation? Ideals? Yes. Ego? Yes. Experience? Experience itself became a barrier. Normally it's a positive thing, but it became a barrier. Thought process, generation, age? Age? Yeah, age and generation gap. Okay. What else? Okay, ego, prejudices. Do you remember that, recall that statement where the prejudice comes through?
I take a photo of my family. I'm the follower of my rule.
That's the ego. Like, I rule the household and my law works. That's ego. What about prejudice? Life teaches lessons, books cannot. What about ideals? talking about Indian values, that Indian values are the best values. So that's the idea. Prejudice, experience, I know it all. I've been around longer than you and I know it all. How about the son? On his side, what were the filters that prevented or that caused miscommunication?
He has some respect. He's not able to.
So do you think the status came in? Remember we talked about status yesterday? Again, age, that he is younger, yeah, and the relationship that he has with his father, that he cannot be assertive, that itself is a barrier. What else? You were the son, so you please tell. Submissive, okay. Submissiveness itself became a barrier. Very casual. Do you remember anything at any stage of the dialogue which prevented the dialogue from happening? Do you remember the statement you made as a son which rubbed your father off the wrong way? Earning more money, okay? Money. Goals, your ambitions to earn more money. So all these were things which prevented the communication from taking place in the right manner. Do you agree? Now, do you think we can improve this? Do you think we can remedy the situation? If this is what happens in every situation, there's always a situation is potentially a situation of conflict because hardly ever our filters match. Even when we come from a similar background, our filters are different. The way we look at things are different from the way others look at them. So, especially in the business, when you are in family situations, you know people. So you understand them, you know their filters, you know where they come from. But in the business world, you don't really know who you are dealing with. You're not aware of their filters. What can you do? By understanding their filters, by knowing what their filters are, perhaps that can help you to prevent miscommunication from occurring. So what can we do here? In this situation, do you think we can do anything to improve, to damage control? Suppose you were to do it differently. Now what we can do is play a game. This is called walk a mile in my shoes. So suppose now we reverse the roles. You will come back here, you will role play once again, and this time you will reverse the roles. A will be the son now and B will be the father. But now that you understand each other's filters, because you've been the son earlier and he has been the father earlier, you know how his brain works or how he thinks. Now perhaps you can put yourself in his shoes and look at things from his angle. And let's see if understanding each other's filters can improve understanding. So shall we do it again? Yeah. So can I have the same volunteers again? But this time with a role reversal. Role reversal. Now I request you to come here because you should not go out of the frame. Please come here. Use this space. Yeah.
Dad, I sat for the CAT exam and I'm so.
Oh, good, that's nice. When are you going to
From July, I'm trying to join. We should talk to you about the fees and everything. I hope you're.
What are the fees, sir?
That's like 1.5 lakh rupees in annum.
Okay.
And I know it's free last that, but I think I'll be better at it than.
I'm very sure about it because 1.5 lakhs is a lot.
Yes, sir. I'm sure about it. Okay, I know it's a big investment, but I hope if I do well, which I hope I will, okay, we'll get paid back that. That will help. The amount of money that I'll earn will help me.
Are you sure about the infrastructure and stuff? I mean, 1.5 lakhs, I'm still a bit skeptical. I know, I understand you, but then I'm still a bit skeptical about this.
No, that I've confirmed it. I say it's good. It's not the best in the country. I'll be very happy to join it with your consent.
Fine, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. So this time we have no problem at all. Why did this happen? It was very cool. Huh? Why did this happen?
Because the son was showing more respect, saying more please, more convincing.
He was making allowance for his experience,
Yes,
yeah, and understanding that father is more experienced than me, showing respect for his experience. So that itself removed the barriers. What did the father do? Did he also put himself in the son's shoes? Yeah? What did he do? He was supportive. The father was supportive.
he was not like
Very good. He was no egoistic and he gave him a patient hearing. Yeah? And he was very supportive. Yes? What else?
He was logical in asking questions like about the infrastructure and the fee.
Okay. Logical, unemotional. Sometimes emotions themselves can come in the way. So he was logical and unemotional, proceeding step by step, trying to work out how to get around things. What else?
he believed in his son that okay, he had to give him.
Okay, he believed trust.
Questioned him twice.
Trust. He trusted in his son. Yes.
Which just that was there.
Yeah. On both sides there was trust, and that improved the situation.
He did ask the same question twice.
Didn't ask the same questions twice. Yeah. Trust was an important factor. What else?
But if you look at the body language of the sun,
Yeah.
earlier the sun was taking a hostile type of pressure.
Okay.
He was rude.
Okay. This is appropriate, friendly body language.
Hands up. Now the hands up.
Very good. Hands were out. Okay. Open, out. Yes. That's great. Topic of discussion was the same. The topic of discussion was the same. And yet, merely understanding each other's filters, how looking at things from the other person's angle helps the process, right? So, shall we conclude this session on barriers and filters by looking at who do you think is responsible for communication? Is the sender responsible or the receiver responsible? So, can we make a list of both are responsible, you say? Both the sender and the receiver are responsible. So, can we make a list of things the sender can do? Can we look at the sender's responsibility? What are the things that the sender can do? Go back to your first session and think of what are the things that the sender can do?
Should have this clarity of thought.
You're very
Clarity, okay.
considering that when saying clarity of speech.
Clarity of thought, speech,
Appropriate body.
okay. Appropriate body language.
It should not be imposing sort of like to convince the other person.
Understand the receiver's front first.
Wonderful. Understand the receiver's frame of mind. Yeah? Understand the receiver's frame of mind. What else? Anything else? No interruptions. Anything else? Avoid ego hassles. Nothing else.
Logical and precise.
Logical and precise. That we have said, clarity of thought, speech. Any other? Any other? That's all? What kind of?
Choose an appropriate medium of.
Choose an appropriate medium. An appropriate medium. You talked about appropriate body language. How about language itself? And language. Yeah, but let's say that we're expanding the term language to include body language. When we say appropriate language, it means verbal language and non-verbal language. Yeah? Okay? Understand the receiver's frame of mind. Make sure there are no interruptions. Avoid ego hassles. Be logical and precise. Choose an appropriate medium. Anything else? No? Okay, let's move on to the receiver's responsibility. What can you as a receivers do to make sure that you have received the hear patiently, okay. Suspend judgment, no judgment. What else? Don't interrupt, okay. Practice active listening, shall we say? Practice active listening. What was the most important factor in the communication process? Which? No, yeah, that is use attending, they call attending skills. Use attending skills. Eye contact, head nods, they are called attending skills. But what was the most important factor in communication? Sender to receiver. And what did the receiver do? Feedback. So whose responsibility is feedback? To provide, give feedback. But suppose the receiver refuses to give feedback or forgets, do you think the sender also could do something? The sender could ask for feedback. Suppose you want somebody, suppose you're giving instructions to somebody to come to your house and the person nods and you're not sure whether the person has understood. You say, okay, why don't you repeat what I said to you? Or somebody hasn't got your number right, you say, okay, repeat the number now. Don't you do that? When you want to make sure that there's no loss of information. So you can ask for feedback. Even the sender can do. It's the sender's responsibility to ask for feedback and the receiver's responsibility to give feedback. What else can the receiver do? Ask for clarifications, very good. If you haven't understood, instead of pretending that you have understood, you can ask for clarifications. How can you do that? Ask questions. Yeah. Yeah. So sender and receiver are therefore both equally responsible for sending and receiving messages. Now we'll move on to, in the next session, we'll move on to how non-verbal communication is one way of encoding messages, and verbal communication is yet another way of encoding messages. We found out that we can encode messages either verbally or non-verbally. I'll stop today by showing you what importance non-verbal communication plays in sending not only non-verbal messages but also verbal messages, okay, and how it can constitute a barrier to communication. So if if two people can come once again, we'll conclude with that, how non-verbal communication can be a barrier. Can you come? Okay, both of you are, I want to illustrate a simple thing like both of you have the situation is like this, that one of you got a very good job. Which is your dream job? TI, okay. And the other is not too happy about it, and yet Infosys, and yet because he's a friend, he has to congratulate the friend. So who's got the job? Sumandeep. Okay. Sumandeep has got the job, and who has to congratulate him? Okay. Okay. Now how will you do it? Remember that you're not very happy, you wanted this job, but since he's a friend, you have to be nice and congratulate him. Now, the rest of you will look for his body language. Is it appropriate or not?
Is he previously aware that I have got a job?
Yeah. No, he's come to, okay, you can tell him. That will be even more interesting. You can tell him, I've got the job. The other person is actually not happy, but he has to look happy. Okay? Quick.
No. I got the job in TI. Thanks. I thought I'll see I get it. I thought I'll go. It was too bad.
It was too bad.
Okay, thanks. Now what happened here? Did he look happy? He was very... So what happened here? The verbal message was contradicted by the non-verbal message, isn't it? It was contradicted by the non-verbal message, and that's why you were not convinced. Similarly, suppose I say, hello, I'm very happy to meet you. I'm very happy to meet you. And hello, good morning, I'm very happy to meet you. It's going to be a wonderful class. Do you agree? You do? You're going to sleep through it? You're going to sleep through the class? Okay. So what happened? Were you convinced? Did you think I was happy about being in the class? No. Because my body language contradicted my statement. I said I'm very happy to be with you here, but my body said no. So I have to, your body language has to be in tandem with your verbal message. So I say, oh, hello, good morning. I'm very happy to be with you all today. I'll be spending the next hour or so with you, and we'll exchange a few tips on verbal and non-verbal communication. Are you convinced this time? Or do I have to smile broader? A broader smile. Okay. So do you understand how contradictory body language can make the communication go haywire? Thank you. Yeah. Okay. We're talking about non-verbal symbols, and we found out that non-verbal symbols tend to get more attention than verbal symbols. A while ago, we saw that if our body language contradicts our verbal message, it tends to get more attention than the verbal message itself. Why does this happen? This happens because of the nature, importance, and functions of non-verbal communication and the encoding of messages which we do verbally and non-verbally. So let's look at how non-verbal symbols work. Encoding, as we found out, is the process of choosing appropriate verbal or non-verbal symbols to convey meaning. Encoding is successful when all parties in the communication process ascribe the same meaning to a particular or group of symbols. This is what we all agreed upon, that only when we all know the rules of the game, when the sender and the receiver or all parties in the communication process understand what a symbol means and give it the same meaning, encoding is complete and it's successful. Symbols are both verbal and non-verbal. We tend to give more importance to verbal symbols and we tend to ignore non-verbal symbols. Why does that happen? And why should we give more importance to non-verbal symbols? I have used the word metacommunication instead of non-verbal communication, the reason is the meaning of the word metacommunication. What does it mean? Metacommunication means beyond communication. Whenever we are communicating, apart from the intentional message that we are conveying, there are messages, there are subtexts, there are messages which we are sending unintentionally, in addition to or which underlie our message. Does that happen? It happens quite often. You pay somebody a compliment, you say, looking nice, but you don't really mean it. The subtext is quite different. There is a meta text. So when we are adults, we don't always say what we have to, whatever is in our mind. Very often we disguise what we want to say. But our body language, our non-verbal communication gives away what we are trying to say, what we really mean. The hidden meaning we give away. Sometimes we give away meaning without intending to, sometimes it's deliberate. Metacommunication, the term is more comprehensive than non-verbal because it includes non-verbal communication, and yet it's more than that. For instance, an action itself could be a form of communication. Somebody invites you to dinner and you don't turn up. That means that person is not important enough to merit a dinner with you. So the non-doing of a thing also can be a form of communication. Like we said, silence could be a form of communication. Now that wouldn't be really a non-verbal form of communication, but it would be meta-communication. Do you remember the percentages? In a total message, we found that only 7% of the messages verbal, the rest of it is non-verbal, it's visual and vocal. 93% of the message is non-verbal, which is made up of the visual component and the vocal component. Do you remember the 30-second rule? Why is it that you form an impression about a person in the very first 30 seconds? How do you do it? On the basis of the visual component, not even the vocal. Even before a person has uttered a word, you have already found an impression about that person based on how she or he looks, how he walks, how he moves. Simple things like that tell you a lot about a person. So the 50%, half the message is already given. Suppose you walk into this room. The moment you walk into that room, your walk, your posture, your facial expression, your body language, it says a lot about you. So even before you come and face the group and you say good morning, the group has already formed an opinion about you. So that's why we say the 30-second rule. In the first 30 seconds, people form an impression about you, and that comes entirely from the visual component. Why does metacommunication matter? What are the different various reasons it matters? One is that it's unavoidable. Verbal communication is something which is intentional. That's why you can choose to speak or you may not choose to speak. But non-verbal communication and metacommunication is something, as I said, even the lack of a response is a response. So you can't avoid it. You can avoid speaking, but you can't avoid being. So you sit with a poker face, or what other things you could do? Give me an example. Yawning. What you just did, Mohit. It's unavoidable. When you're bored, you don't want to say anything, and yet you convey a message because it's unavoidable. When you're nervous, your hands start shaking and you start trembling and you start stammering. You don't want to do it, but it happens. Now, the next point would be that it may have different meanings for different people. Why does that happen? Why does it have different meanings for different people? The same expression, the yawn, for instance. A yawn, a very loud yawn is very telling. Why does it have different meanings for different people? For instance, I know, suppose your friend knows that you've been out to an all-night party. So you know why your friend knows why you're yawning, because you haven't slept, you're sleep deprived. But say if I see you in the class yawning, I think maybe you're bored, right? You might be sleepy, you might be bored. Another person would think you've been working on the computer all night preparing for your assignment, and that's why you're tired. The yawn can mean different things to different people. A non-verbal messages different from verbal messages, that they may be intentional or they may be unintentional. Like, in spite of yourself, you might say something which you didn't intend to say. The problem with non-verbal messages is that they tend to get more attention than the words, don't they? Suppose a while ago I said, suppose I say I'm very happy and I don't look happy, or I tell you that you did a good job, but my expression doesn't show it, you don't believe me, right? You worked very hard on a presentation, but there are typos in your slides. So that says a lot about you. That says you might have put in so much hard work, but it might not deflect from your hard work. At the same time, it says you're a careless person, that you haven't looked for these errors. It gets more attention. It provides clue about the sender's background and motives. How do you know this? The way you dress, the way you move, the way you talk, everything says a little about where you come from. You might not have to say it in words. Like in your ad, you use the words, I am this. But the way you look, the way you dress, the way you speak, that itself says a lot about your background and your motives. It's influenced by the circumstances surrounding communication. What does that mean? It's influenced by the circumstances surrounding communication. What does that mean? It means that suppose you two are very good friends. People know you to be very good friends and you're smiling at one another. Now another day when your friends find you, they see one of you has stopped smiling. So in the context that you're friends, one of you stops smiling, it indicates that something has gone wrong between the two of you. Otherwise, you might be the kind of person who doesn't smile in another context. But here, because you are friends, you are a friendly person, you tend to smile a lot, and today you're not smiling, that means something has gone wrong. Might contradict the verbal meaning. We've talked about this. What you may say with words, you might contradict with words. You say, I'm not tired, I'm not bored, but if you yawn, you're telling me that you are bored, you are tired. It may be beneficial or it may be harmful. That's obvious, isn't it? You might do somebody a favor unintentionally, or you might harm someone. Do we agree that actions are louder than words, and why metacommunication matters? Yeah? What are the functions of nonverbal communication? The first function would be substituting. Can you give me an example of substituting? Yeah, wave. A wave would be. Okay, how would repeating be? The second function would be repeating. Suppose I say hi and wave. Both a hi and a wave would be repeating. What I'm doing and what I'm saying, I'm repeating with that. How about complementing? The next factor would be complementing. Yeah, okay. So, if you've done a good job, I congratulate you and I pat you on the back or shake your hands. That's like complimenting you. Complimenting the verbal message. You've done a good job, and a pat on the back would be that. What about accenting? Accenting, how would be different from accentuating then? What would be the difference between accentuating and accenting?
Accenting is you accede to something, whereas accentuating is you accentuate your words with actions. Perhaps back them up, follow them up, make them more stronger.
Okay, you're right with accentuating, but accenting here would be more in the sense we use an accent in speaking. Why do we accent certain words? Why do we stress certain parts? To give them more importance. Huh? So like in writing, we put page breaks, so we give paragraphs, we give titles. to show which part is different from the other. Accenting can also be used to break up the various parts, emphasize the different parts. Suppose we give a pause after a statement, that means I've come to an end and I'm beginning the next statement. That would be accenting. Accentuating would be what Pankaj said, that if you want to emphasize, accentuate your verbal message, you're angry and I want the assignments today. Yeah. I want the assignments today. When I say that means I'm emphatic, I'm angry, and I bang my fist on the table to say that it can't be tomorrow. That would be accentuating. Regulating, we talked about regulating when we'll go into that again, about how we regulate our conversation through nonverbals. When we look at someone, when we are speaking or listening to someone, we give verbal or visual, we give non-verbal cues to the other person, when to start speaking, when to stop speaking, when we are giving feedback, when we are asking for feedback. We use our gaze, we use the direction of the gaze, we use our eyes, we use our head, we use our smile. We do lots of things to show that the conversation can continue and whose turn it is. That would be regulating. The last thing would be deceiving and revealing. Do you think that's important? Deceiving and revealing? Why so? When we are young, we tend to reveal. Our faces, our bodies are dead giveaways. They say everything, we have a very transparent, very easy to read body language. When we are angry, we are angry. When we are happy, we are happy. Our whole body speaks. But when you're older, what do you learn to do? That's part of your socializing skills, that you learn to mask your feelings. Isn't that so? If you're really angry with somebody, do you say, I want to kill my teacher because she bores me to death? You can't do it. But if you are a 5-year-old, you can say it, not do it perhaps, but you can say it and get away with it. And the teacher's not going to hold it against you. But when you're 15, you know better than to say something like that. Yeah? You wouldn't say, I want to kill you, but you'll just look bored. When you're 25, you're smarter. You know that if you look bored, it might reflect on your marks in class participation. So you say, that was a great lecture. So you learn to fake. You learn to deceive using your body language. Do you think that is important? Do you think that's important? In business, since you're all going to use, we are not talking about body language here in personal relationships, though whatever we learn about body language here would also apply to personal relationships, but we are not going to cover that area. However, I would say that whatever the feelings, the emotions that you bring in personal relationships, the same feelings you bring into business and to your workplace as well. So the same rules apply there as well. But in business, do you think it's okay to reveal your feelings? Or is there any hard and fast rule about it? What do you think? Is there a hard and fast rule that you should not reveal or you should deceive? Very good, depends on the situation. In the past, when business was very old-fashioned, people were trained not to reveal any emotions at all. Emotions were not fit for the workplace. Does that rule still apply? No, it's okay to reveal emotions, but at the right moment, the right degree. So, but what you need to do is that you must be able to pull them on. It seems very mechanical, but that's what is required in life and in the workplace, that whenever you're required to reveal your emotions, if you're really angry with somebody and you know it's not going to do the job if you're angry, there's no point showing your anger. Maybe you can just have a tight smile and get on with your job. So with this, we stop the functions of nonverbal communication. With this, we'll stop with the functions